Good morning, everyone. This is Jolene from the Iowa Communications Alliance. I show 10 a.m., so we're going to go ahead and get started with our Repopulate Rural Iowa using Community Builders webcast with Frank and Kimberly Spillers of Global Horizons. Before we get started with Frank and Kimberly, we do want to go through just a couple housekeeping slides. Want to remind you to use the Iowa Communications Alliance online group forums to stay in touch with your friends or post questions, share a photo, check out the calendar of events, and you can even win money. Once you log in to the Iowa Communications Alliance website, go to the right-hand side under My Profile, and you'll see the word groups. Once you've clicked on groups, you'll see we've set up groups for a variety of personnel types: customer service and front office, marketing, the general ICA member group, a video providers group, technicians group. There is a telco managers only group. That is one of the two groups that are locked or controlled. You have to be a general manager to participate in that group, and also on the ICA Board of Directors group. Then there is the ICA Communications Alliance newsletter, which pretty much everyone is part of, so you can go there and find last week's newsletter or archive newsletters from the past. And there's always options to add additional groups as you get going with these groups. If you want to form another one, we can certainly do that. Just shoot me an email and we can get one started if you think there's another type of group you'd like to have on that list. As with most social media, you need to get your connections established, or your friends, if you will, the people that you follow on these group forums. So to do that, you need to click on the group directory and then find the person that you want to connect with. So there'll be a listing in each of those groups. You can see here, this is one of the marketing groups. There's Melissa Stagg that we could connect with. So you click on her name. And then, of course, Marcy Borner's picture comes up. But you click on the person's name, and then their wall or profile will come up. You can see where they're from and different things about that person. And click on the Connect button up on the top. It's the fourth icon there. And once you click on the Connect button, a little message box will come up. You can choose to send them a message or just send them the connection request. Once they've accepted your request, you can look at your connections list and see everyone that you're connected to and people that they're connected to that you might want to also connect with. How you can win money, you ask? Well, at the Iowa Communications Alliance Impact Conference coming up in November 12th and 13th to be exact, we're going to be awarding 3 $100 gift cards. So for each personnel type that we have designed this conference for, marketing, customer service, and technicians, those that are the most active on the group forums will be in a drawing for a $100 gift card. So be sure to get out there and get your connections established and start posting your questions, comments, or photos. Upcoming events, as I just mentioned, the Iowa Communications Alliance Impact Conference is November 12th and 13th at the Stony Creek Inn in Johnston. It is designed for technicians, customer service, and marketing personnel, and of course general managers are always welcome to attend. We've got a great agenda that day. It's over 60 sessions, I believe, 30 speakers, and we've already got about 200 registrants. So be sure you get signed up. We will be running a promotional discount for 10% off to celebrate the Iowa Communications Alliance birthday in November. Just type in the code HAPPY in the promo code box, and you'll receive 10% off your registration for the Impact Conference. Also coming up February 12th, we're going to have Legislative Day at the Capitol. This is different than in the past where we've included Legislative Day with the annual meeting and expo. This will be a separate event in February. Kevin Condon will be sending out more information about Legislative Day. And then, of course, March 3rd through the 5th is the second annual meeting and expo of the Iowa Communications Alliance. Registrations are coming in currently for exhibitors, and registration for membership and attendees will begin in January. But save the date. This year's theme is We've Got the Power. Just a reminder, this webcast is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to the recording when it becomes available. We ask that you mute your own phone. We will go into presentation mode, but once we go off, if you would like to keep your phone muted, that will ensure the quality of the recording. If you have questions you'd like to ask throughout the webcast, you can submit a question with the chat icon to Frank Spillers is the name, or to all, and we will address those questions as time permits. Or you can use the raise hand icon to ask your question verbally at the end of the webcast. So at this time, I would like to welcome Frank and Kimberly Spillers of Global Horizons. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thanks for having us. It's just a great opportunity. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and put us in presentation mode.
All right.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. I heard that. Thank you all for attending this great opportunity. We think that of a process that we have used in a couple of different states, and to work with rural areas. Repopulate rural America is basically what we're trying to do. And we feel that because of the technology that we have available and the work that you do, creating great opportunities and creating great business in your community, that is a prime opportunity specifically for Iowa that we can do to start building and repopulating some of our rural communities and rural towns. While we get into this, let me just tell you a little bit about who I am anyway, so you know you know where my experience is coming from and what we do. It's taking a little bit for the slides to change. Let's see how long it takes for the slide to change on there. Let's see. Okay, Jolene, let me try one more time to advance it.
You're using the right arrow key?
Yeah. Let's try it again. There we go.
Let me bring it back, and I will try. We're sorry for the technical difficulty.
It always works in the test. There we go. All right.
All right.
Okay. Thank
I'll
you.
give it back to you.
Okay. All right. As my career has developed over the last 30 years, I've been involved in community and rural economic development throughout about 3 different states, working for 3 different governors in South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. And I've worked for on all different levels of economic development for cities, for counties, for the state, and also for the federal governments, most recently with USDA Rural Development out of Iowa, as I was the director of the Office of Community Development. And then we started to build our business based upon that. And with rural development and working with communities, we have started to develop, and I've looked at what makes communities successful, and that is to start developing all the leadership skills and behavioral changes for successful communities. A lot of places just do leadership skills, but we also go a little bit deeper into what is the culture about and what behaviors make communities and businesses very successful. And as we have done that, we've also written a book about that. Jolene, if you could advance that slide, that would be great. And for some reason, it's not working off of mine.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. But our book is entitled The Bewildered Way. It's the art of giving along. It's to welcome, understand, comfort, and appreciate yourself and others. It is a way to act. It's a way to create an environment to where people are engaged in what they're doing, not only engaged in volunteerism, but also engaged in the workforce. And because of that, and with economic development, Jolene, if you could advance that, please. With economic development, we have created a model of it takes a village to engage a workforce. And we have 4 components that we feel are very important to engage a workforce, and that is in the education community, the community itself of where you live, the business community, and the individual community. This is all based upon Gallup's research that they have done over the last 10 years or so of where is our engagement going and what factors do we have that employees are engaging. And the startling statistics that we have through the Gallup research is this, that only 30% of the American workforce is fully engaged in what they're doing in work. Now, that's a lot of productivity and a lot of money that's being left on the table by over 70% of all employees out there are disengaged or actively disengaged. And the actively disengaged, or 20% of those of all employees, are actively pursuing the engaged workers to make them disengaged. And so we think that to engage a workforce, it takes the full community and these 4 workforce hubs. And so we address all those 4 workforce hubs using the BWUCA way to create great environments that engage people in what they're doing. In other words, following their passions and having visions and goals to get them to what they want to where they want to go and to do what they would like to do. And because of that, then our workforce model and our community development model, and the next slide, Jolene, please, our community development model that we have looks like this. It's a pyramid to where we think that communities and economic development begin with leadership. It's the leadership development piece that is the foundation of where communities grow and businesses grow. And without leadership development, you can't have community development. And I'm going to explain each of these components as we go along with a process that we use and how it hits at each different level. And with the community development, in other words, the organizations you have in your community, how people decide what your community is going to do, and your interaction with your community members and the engagement of your community, you cannot have the top of the pyramid, which all of us really want, and that's wealth development. That's where economic development really happens, is creating wealth, not just creating jobs, but creating wealth. And that's our model. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we always like to start with not what we're going to do, but why we're going to do it. And I'm just going to, if you could advance that slide, Jolene, that'd be great. And talk a little bit about defining as a community what business are we in. So as you look at your community, you have built your business and you are part of a business that have been entrepreneurs. And Iowa is blessed, and this is just such an amazing economic development and amazing business opportunity that we have here because of you, with Iowa having the most telephone companies in the country, and as a state that the infrastructure that you have put into place has just created a great opportunity for economic development, and I think we are now just scratching the surface to where we can take great opportunity for this, and also to help increase your customer base. And so we even have to do as a community, what business are we in, just like you have to sit with your boards and your directors to say what business are we in all the time. And as we look at our community and to see and to start to define what business we're in, I think, Jolene, could you advance that, please? I think what from the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek is a great book, but a lot of our communities do the what. We start working with what we're going to be doing. We're going to create jobs. We're going to recruit entrepreneurs. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing that. And we're going to be creating jobs. But if we start digging deeper and we look at people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And as a community, have we ever defined why we do something? You know, we go into strategic planning processes, and we always go, what are we going to be doing? but we never dig down deeper and we say, what are we going to be doing or how are we going to be doing it, but really from the heart of the community, why? And as you can see on the left side of that slide, the why is always defined and determined why people do things by their feelings and their trust and their loyalty to something that they do. It's the human behavior in all decision making, and it really doesn't have any capacity for language. It's why we buy something is so it's emotional why we buy it. The what we do is all on the analytical thought process. And so strategic planning is real easy when we figure out what we do. But you really have to dig down deep into the why you do that, and that's what the community builders process is all about, is to find out why you do such a thing. And what happens when I really this came to home and the process that we use came to why we should be doing this is our definition of collaboration. When I was working, Jolene, if you could advance, please. When I was working for USDA Rural Development back in the mid-'90s and the late '90s, and I worked for them up till 2003. One of my first opportunities here was to bring together the community of early childhood and education professionals. In other words, who's taking care of our kids for our workforce? Because in economic development, I always defined our early care and education system as the soft infrastructure that we really need to start to pay attention to as businesses as we look at economic development, as who's taking care of our kids so our workers can focus on our productivity for the workforce instead of what's happening with our children. And so as we look at early care and education system, I invited them actually to a meeting down at the Federal Building in downtown Des Moines, and I said, let's talk about a vision for early care and education in the state. And so they all came. They're from all over the state and all over from the agencies and private areas. They came for two reasons only. They thought there was money available, or they thought that if they had money, they were going to lose it. So they came on the left side. They came to my table from their perception. They came to my table in a very defensive mode. And it got me to thinking about what is true collaboration. You know, we throw that word around all the time that we're collaborating with others and we have this collaborative, but we really don't know what that means. And so I started to define a collaborative more as I want your table to come to my table because we need your mission, we need your vision to create a common vision for our collaborative. So this model of collaboration is more of a collaborative model and an open model. In other words, if I take a resource, and I've got a pen in my hand right now, and I'm looking at this pen as my contribution as this resource to this collaborative, and we have this common vision of all the resources coming together, all the agencies, all the people, all the opportunities that we have of coming to the table to really create a vision and affect change in what we're doing. And we say we're a collaboration. And so I say, okay, I'm bringing my resource to this vision, this new vision that we have created. I'm going to put my resource on the table and back away from it. And as a collaborative, that is no longer my resource. It belongs to the collaboration. What normally happens, though, is that in the come to my table model is if I don't like what the collaboration or how I define a collaboration is doing, I pick up my resource and I take my toys and I go home. But a true collaboration says, here's my resource, the collaboration will operate it and own it as they see fit. And if I don't like what's going on, I can walk away from the collaboration, but the resource stays, and the resource that I have given the collaboration stays. That is a true collaborative model of what we do. And the reason that is Joey, if you could advance that, please. And as we look at a community and what has happened, and even in our workforce, and this is for your employees too, as you look at people and you look at how they decide and what they're doing, is that in our communities we have a population that has come to us with people that have a sense of well-being. They have moved into our communities. They have taken a job with you for very specific reasons to create that sense of well-being, that balance. And that sense of well-being and that individual are made up of the values that they hold, that they bring with them, their value system that they bring with them. And their sense of well-being then is made up by three things: the security that they feel, how safe they feel in the environment, the choices that they have, and the quality of life. And I define quality of life as a perception issue. Quality of life for me is a lot different than it is for you, and how I view quality of life is not the same as everybody. And so in community development, when we say we've got the best quality of life of anybody that out there, I tend to push back on that, and I say, you might think you have a great quality of life, but that doesn't mean that your neighbor thinks that they have a great quality of life. And so as a perception issue, quality of life is a very individual choice, and it balances them with their sense of well-being. Let me show you how this works, is that if you come into, let me tell you a little story about how, well, no, I'll save that story till a little bit later here. But the sense of well-being is that when people have a sense of choices, or they feel their choices are taken away, then their sense of well-being is upset. Let's go to the next slide here, Jolie. We can do that. When we have an issue within the community, we have this graph of stages of an issue growth. Either you have emerging, existing, or very disruptive issues, and you have a perceived level of choices for people. And so as you're looking at the left side of the graph, the higher number of choices that an individual has, the less of a disruptive issue that you have. So you start taking away people's choices and you start deciding for them what's best for them, the more disruptive that issue gets. Let's take, for example, some school mergers out there that we might have. What would happen if a school board goes into session, say, on a Monday evening, and nobody knows about this, and they are just having this meeting, and then all of a sudden they say, you know what, because of our budgets, we're going to have to close our schools. And so they make that decision, and I know this is they can't do that, only because of they'll have meetings prior to this. But let's take this just for an example, that they make that decision to close their schools. So they vote Monday evening to close their schools, and then what's the coffee shop talk that next Tuesday morning? It's very disruptive. Nobody in that community really had a choice with what the school board was voting. Now take that instance and spread that out to city councils, to county supervisors, where a few people make decisions for the whole community, or a few people make decisions for a whole business. And they don't bring people along. Then when people then think their choices are being taken away, you get a very disruptive issue. And the next slide, please, Jolie. When people have a disruptive issue in their level of choices, it's very a high cost to resolve those issues. The more disruptive that issue is, the higher the cost it is to resolve. Let me give you an example here. I've worked with a community in the state, a very rural community in the state, and that community had a fire, a very major fire within a forest that connected up to that community. So their tourism industry was hurt in one summer. And then 2 years later, they had a flash flood that came through their community and wiped out a lot of their public infrastructure, their parks, a golf course that they had built by volunteers, some of the buildings, only one business got hurt, but it was more of the public infrastructure that the community enjoyed and shared. My position was in the school auditorium one night, and I was leading and facilitating a session about how can we build our public infrastructure back, and they could have what they wanted. And when I was up in front of them, it was like pulling teeth to get them to talk to anybody. It was the quietest strategic planning session I have ever been in. And so after 2 hours, I finally got frustrated, and we said, okay, we're going to adjourn this session, and in 2 weeks, let's come back and we'll start this again. And so in the meantime, I went to a state historian, and I asked the state historian, I said, what's going on with this community? And he said, Frank, I know exactly what's going on with this community, and the community is that 100 years ago, and I said, excuse me? And he said, yes, 100 years ago, they gave an award to their neighbor that hated their neighbor the most. So in other words, you were celebrating on New Year's Eve with the whole community and at parties around town, celebrating and having fun, and then when you went to bed, you woke up on New Year's Day the next morning, and you said, you know what, I'm going to win that award. I'm going to hate my neighbor more than anybody else. And so over time, that became an award the community gave, and it became a very disruptive issue. And so they might have given the award for maybe 2 or 3 years and no longer than that, but it remained within that community for 100 years as culture. It remained as this is the way we act. And when I went back to the strategic planning session in a couple of weeks, and I got in front of those people again, I told them that story, and you can just see their faces start to relax by saying, "Well, and turning to the person next to them and saying, I was wondering why I couldn't play with you when I was small, and I was wondering why my grandpa wouldn't let me play with this couple across the street, these kids across the street." But their faces relaxed, and once they understood the culture of their community and why they acted the way they did, they could move forward. But it wasn't up until that time that they could do that. So we have developed and we work with communities on a two-pronged approach. Jolene, if you could advance that, please. On a two-pronged approach. And that approach is based upon the infrastructure that we have in Iowa, the fiber that we have in the ground, and the fiber that you have within your communities, and the opportunity that your community has right there with the infrastructure is to create the infrastructure to identify and recruit people globally in the ages of 30 to 49 in that age range. The reason why we have chosen, and we look at the 30 to 49-year-old age range is that they tend to have 10 to 14-year-olds in their family. There's some research going on in Minnesota and out of the University of Nebraska that are studying where the bubbles are in the demographics of communities that are growing. And that bubble is in the ages of people of 30 to 49-year-olds. Also, when you see a bubble of 30 to 49-year-olds, you see a bubble of growth within your school system too, because of the 10 to 14-year-olds. And so we want kids to then go away, look at get some real world experience, and then look at them not only just to invite the community and the population back that have moved away from our communities, but also to open it up to people on the coast, people globally that are looking for great opportunities in our rural areas. And the second prong of that is to prepare communities to how to engage these newcomers and the ideas that they bring. 75% of all Iowans were born and raised in Iowa, and 50% of all those born and raised in Iowa live within 50 miles of where they were born and raised. Now, that's great, and I was not born and raised in Iowa, and I get in trouble all the time for when I say this, but I'm going to say it right out because I'm on the phone and nobody can throw anything at me right now. Okay. is that Iowa's a great place to live, and Iowans that were born and raised here think so. However, Iowa is not a real welcoming state, as we might want to think, and some of our communities aren't either. Because of this, when newcomers move into our communities, and we're all for creating jobs, and we're all for creating that ribbon-cutting opportunity, when newcomers move within our communities, we accept them, we welcome them for about the first week. And then they start becoming engaged within our communities, and what happens is they bring new ideas. I was at a meeting once, and a woman told me that she had 4 kids in the school system, went to a school board meeting, addressed the school board on some issues that she wanted to address the school board. And when she sat down, the woman next to her turned to her and said, "You had no right talking at the school board meeting." And she said, the woman that spoke said, why don't I have the right to talk at this meeting? I've got 4 kids in school. And the other woman turned to her and said, "You haven't lived in this community long enough." And so sometimes that's our attitude of newcomers coming to within our community because of the culture that we have. Many times I have been told, working with communities, that I've said, "Well, how long have you lived here?" "Well, 30 years." "Where'd you move from?" "Well, I moved from outside of this community," and they tell me they're just now starting to feel a part of that community. And I'm sure there's some folks out there that are nodding their heads, yes, that this is what we have to look at. But we also have to start training our communities. How do you welcome new people? How do you openly engage new folks, and you want them to participate? And it's different on the leadership scale because of some people come in positions, and they're opened and they're welcomed into our community because of their position, not necessarily because of the new ideas that they bring, but because of their position. New superintendents of schools, new city administrators, new hospital administrators, new chamber of commerce, new economic developers, those types of folks. But yet they're still not really ingrained, but they are welcomed because of their leadership position. But we have to look at who are we bringing into our communities and how do we welcome them. So it's getting them ready to accept and to look at the new communities. Okay, Jolene, so if you can, please. So we have the goal of this repopulation strategy is number one goal, and this is why that we're so thankful for this opportunity to talk to the telecommunications industry, is because we think we can we know we can increase technology customers for you as a telephone company, and specifically we have the technology that's there. All we have to do is start educating people how to use it, and we have to then start getting more users for you as we start to grow wealth, not to grow maybe necessarily on jobs, but to grow wealth. Our number two goal is the global recruitment of technology entrepreneurs that will live and work in our rural community, in the rural areas. In other words, there's a lot of people out there that work from home. We work from our home. We're using the technology that's available to us to work from our home. We don't need an office. We can live any place we want to in the country, and we choose to live here. We live in Atlantic. I wish we didn't live in Atlantic only because of the phone company. The technology that we have is not as great as if we were living just 6 miles away in another community. We would have access to a lot better technology because it's a rural telephone company. We also the third goal of that is to increase school enrollments. Remember, the 30 to 49-year-olds are going to bring students with them, and then the increase in school enrollments can help address some of those issues too. And the fourth one is to educate and raise awareness of the technology infrastructure that we have in rural Iowa to our own communities and also to the world. there's a lot of, we sit in southwest Nebraska, or Iowa, in southwest Iowa, we sit in what I call the triangle industry here. We have Omaha as an economic engine, and we have Des Moines as an economic engine, but we also have Kansas City as an economic engine. And we have identified in each of the quadrants of the state of Iowa that there is a triangle of economic engines, whether you're using Omaha, whether you're using Minneapolis, Chicago, St. Louis, and Des Moines. It's all a triangle of economic activity and economic engines that people are using technology, and there's technology companies. We have Facebook and Microsoft in Des Moines. We have Google in Council Bluffs, and they're all using technology folks, and that's where we can get our workforce and the people that want to use our technology there. So if you can advance that. The outcomes that we can see from this process is the awareness of community culture. Our entrepreneurial wealth grows, and entrepreneurial wealth is not just a business that's growing there, but it's also the thinking process that entrepreneurs bring and the ideas that entrepreneurs bring to your community. An increase of population of technology users, which is a market for you as a telco. It's how the community then and the region, multi-communities, can operate as a collaborative and develop a unity of purpose, a purpose of why and what business as a community are we in as we start to identify where we are. Can you advance that, please, Julie? When we establish a collaborative environment within communities and within a region, this is what happens. All citizens engage in regular deliberative dialogues. In other words, when you look at those models for what's a disruptive issue, people are engaged and they have choices in how they can come to the table or they can come to the collaborative and talk about the economic and social political issues that are a way that engage everybody. It's also that people can find the common ground and common values, that they talk about their values as they grow. And when people then talk about their values and their sense of well-being is then balanced and their values then are upheld. When you have conversations and value-based conversations, you uphold people's opinions. And we've had many opportunities with immigration, with financial security to host these types of conversations and on what communities should do about their economic development as we have done these conversations across the state and across in other environments in different states. Can you advance that, please, Julie? In our community builders process, this is what happens, and this is what we are having you think about. You identify up to 5 communities in your area that commit to do this process. This is a wonderful process that brings communities together as a collaborative. It's not changing your community. Your community is what its purpose is. It is combining your community with the power of a collaborative and the power of a region. You identify a leadership team of individuals within each of your communities that you are using, and you host individual town dialogues about how do we involve people in the direction of economic development. There's a lot of people out there that aren't involved in economic development activities and community development activities because they don't feel like when they show up, their opinions matter. And so looking at how do you host these deliberative dialogues based upon the community development is setting up that structure to where the values are upheld and you start to engage a new group of citizenry on your economic development activities to help grow your towns and help to grow your customer base. You can advance the next one, please. So the community builders looks like this. Your team of individuals then come together, and they start. We ask these teams to talk about this. On your community builders, your team then plans a day that says, if I'm a new business, If I'm a new business, what would you show me? If I'm a new person moving into your community, what would you show me? Okay? And so they start then to start planning their day, and we meet in all the community teams meet in one community each month. We tour the community then, and we look at. Let me start at a different place here. The Community Builders Day starts like this: is that all these community teams meet within your community. You start the community the tour of the community by saying this: what would you show new people if they moved in your community? That community team then plans a tour in around the economic development area, and they plan that tour, and they say, this is what our community is. This is how and what we have to show as a community. Many times when we do this, the community team finds new opportunities within their communities. We have had people that have lived in that community for a lifetime, and they said, oh, I have never even known that we had this here. So you discover a whole bunch about your community. After the community, then you come together for a dinner, and this is a very Iowa value-based type of opportunity to where, if we have a meeting, we serve food. Food is a neutralizing factor. It raises the trust issue and decreases defense mechanisms off of people. And so then you have this community dinner, and then you have an education program. And when we have done this around technology, the telcos then host the education program, and that's your opportunity, the telco's opportunity, to educate the community on what type of telecommunications infrastructure do we have in our community. And it raises awareness of the telecommunications that is there within that community and how it can be used and what strategies and what opportunities even the existing communities have within that. And then we identify and implement a wealth creation strategy of that meeting. You come out, and then for the next 30 days before your next meeting, you are actually implementing some of the strategies that you have done on that day. So it's not just we're going to meet for the meeting's sake. We're meeting to develop a strategy and also to develop action steps, and then we're going to implement those action steps to help start to recruit people to our community. Okay, next slide, please. And then what we do as Global Horizons team is that we meet with your individual communities in between your meetings, in between to help plan the tour process, to help plan and implement those strategies, and to bring other resources within your communities. And then that last meeting that we have is more of a celebration of what we have done over the course of time that can do that. This is a great process. When we have done this in Cass County, we did this in Cass County based upon telecommunications about 5 years ago, when we utilized 3 of our telephone companies within our county. When we were educating our communities on what telecommunications can do and how we can do this recruitment, we had the opportunity for one of our members that participated in the community builders process to engage in a person that was from Western Massachusetts. And this person was checking out Iowa in the rural areas of where could he move his family. And he ran across, because of a church connection, ran across one of our members within our community builders process and started to engage in a conversation. And this person in Western Massachusetts worked online from his home, and he worked for a coding company, and he traveled the world. He was looking for a place that he could move his family, that he could raise chickens, actually, is what he wanted to do. And as they were engaged in conversation, our community builders member then invited him to church. And so the family came out, visited Cumberland. Cumberland is a town of about 400 people. And our community builders member then bought a house, remodeled the house, became the landlord. The gentleman from Western Massachusetts moved his family to Cumberland, had 3 kids at the time. They now have 5 kids, and so they are increasing the population. And he serves on the gentleman from Western Massachusetts now is still working for and still working for a coding company, but he's got access to the airports of Omaha and Des Moines and Kansas City, and he travels the world doing workshops and seminars based upon his company. And their family lives in Cumberland. They're very comfortable. And also, he's a city council member. So he has engaged himself within the community and what he wants to do. So he's well on his way to building that. But it was based upon the community builders process and educating the town of what telecommunications and what technology is in the ground there. Next slide, please, Jolene. So as we look at our triangle model, this is where we hit each of the components on there. If you want to increase your leadership development, you identify what you have and what others have. In other words, what's in your community and what's in your region of what other communities have there also, to raise awareness. We have issues within our rural areas that we don't get along with our communities that are our neighbors, but yet we need them on a workforce. We need them because people commute. We need them because people move around. And so as our leadership development, we have to then start engaging other communities and to forget the past and to start building a new culture of how do we collaborate with other communities around us. On the community development level, we have to then start to integrate and start to put in processes that involve and integrate people in conversations and making choices about what is happening within their community and what's happening within their region. All of that then builds up to creating wealth, and that is to how to identify and develop those entrepreneurial opportunities, not only in building businesses, but into building entrepreneurial opportunities in ideas and engaging folks within how we make communities better and how do we make our lives better. And so, okay, Jolene, the next slide, please. So our list of success is this. You create a BWUCA environment. In other words, you create a civil environment where people belong and people get along. You have a very collaborative leadership, and that's not just about what ideas we're going to be using, but collaborative leadership is how people work together. And then you create your shared vision, your shared goals, and you get your youth involved. A lot of communities say they have youth involvement, but they're not sitting on their school boards, they're not sitting on city councils. The youth involved is coming downtown and maybe they're doing a cleanup day. But really involve your youth in the choices that you make for economic development. You have a communication system that all people are involved in, and then all citizens see a role to where they can engage. And with that, what I would like to do is to ask questions from people if they have any questions. How this is an engagement model, how we might engage with this, and your feedback on the whole idea of how do we use the technology and how do we use the infrastructure in Iowa already to repopulate rural areas.
Thank you, Frank. We'll go ahead and take it off of presentation mode so people can have this discussion verbally. Please use the raise hand icon, though, so we can talk to each person one at a time.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
The one thing I didn't mention is kind of the length of time that this is a multi-year process, actually. It's not just a one-time hit. But because of the time frame for the tours and what we need to do, you need kind of daylight for the tours. So we hold the community dialogues or the community dialogues say in January and February, and we get those communities engaged in there, and then we start planning for the community tours about in March, and we host community meetings around your region with the communities that you're starting to engage in. This isn't just for communities, but also then to cooperate with other telephone companies that might be close, that handle other communities that are within your region, of how can we grow together, not as a competitive model, but as a how can we use multi-telephone companies to grow our system. We have also been blessed last February to visiting with the Rural Caucus of the Iowa House, bringing in, and they asked some of our ideas of how can we start to then repopulate the rural areas, and we addressed them with this. Representative Bolbauer out of the Manning area then raised his hand and said that he was interested in doing this. So we have been working with Representative Bolbauer on creating a collaboration out of his district. We're in election mode right now, so a lot of things are on hold because he is on the campaign trail. But we are looking at what's going to be happening at the first part of the year in Iowa. When I have also done this back in a region in Nebraska, there were a 5-county region where they did a 3-year process with community builders, and over the course of the 3 years, they created 250 jobs. So this is a job creating model. In fact, one mayor also said there was no way that before this she would pick up the phone and call anybody in that next county over. But because of the way that she built a relationship through the community builders process of this, the walls came down, they found their collaborative, and they found the synergies that they could work together, and that's what it took for them to start repopulating and to rebuilding their communities and their businesses.
It looks like we have a question from ICA board member Chuck Deisbeck.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Frank. I'm just curious of the cost that typically, each community would incur, and also where is who drives this type of thing? I mean, the presentation is to the telcos, but I think this really needs to be driven probably by the communities. And how does that message get out to the communities?
Great question, Chuck. Thanks for asking that. The driving force, it really can come from the communities, but the driving force can really be anybody. It can be the community. The communities need to be a part of this. The cost of the process, as we have costed it out, is about $7,500 per community. And the more communities you get, the lower the cost is as we build on this, and that's on a per year basis. Now we can have about 5 or 6 communities in a region that work effectively with that for one of the processes. If you get more than 3 communities, that cost drops down to $5,000 per community on there. And that's on a per year basis. The driving force behind that, though, is really, it can be the telco, and I tell you why is because it's a marketing aspect of it, and anybody in the community can drive economic development. It doesn't take any organization. It does take a commitment from the city, though, and from other organizations within that community, because you want folks involved. Some of our communities, but I know none of those are on the line right here, are driven by good old boys, and that is, there's a lot of disruptive issues within those communities because nobody has a choice in the matter, and nobody is participating in what they're doing. So the idea of opening it up and driving that is just what atmosphere are you going to do to engage those folks? Are you going to have an engaging atmosphere to include a lot of the people?
Chuck, this is Kim. It seems to me that the driving force would likely be community leaders who see the trends, who see what's going to happen to the communities if action is not taken to repopulate. That makes sense. Here in Cass County, we haven't grown for 100 years. So we have issues as the county seat town about what our future is going to be in conversations about school, sharing programs and things like that. That's common across rural America, common across Iowa. And so it makes sense that the driving force would be people who are aware of what's going on in the next 5 to 10 years and want to be proactive about it.
We have a question that was chatted in. Do you partner or include other rural providers such as an REC, rural water, etc.?
Oh, absolutely. It's critical that the partners are come to the collaboration. I mean, their mission is exactly what drives the community. This isn't an exclusive type of operation. It's how many providers and how many people we can engage in repopulating the area. It's like our model says, it takes a village. It's not just one person. It's not just one industry. It's the whole community, and that includes the resources.
That makes sense. I don't have any other hands raised on my screen. Frank, do you have any chat questions that came directly to you?
I don't. I don't think so. No, I don't. If anybody has any questions or they're thinking of, and as they get off this workshop or the webinar here, that things might not have been real clear, other questions that you talk about as you hang up, there's our contact information on the screen. That's my cell phone number, and that's my email address. You can contact us at any point in time. We'd be more than happy to visit with you about this process and what it means. There's some more. Also, if you go to bwuka.com, that's our website and blog site, and that will kind of give other indication of our blogs of our philosophy and what we think. And we just really appreciate, Jolene, this opportunity for the webinar, and we appreciate the participants for hanging in there with us.
Well, thank you very much, Frank and Kim. We appreciate it as well. On behalf of the association, we really appreciate and thank you for all of your time. And just a reminder to all of the members on the call today, we will be sending you a recording of the webcast so you can play that for your board of directors or community meetings, whatever might fit for this. And also, please fill out our survey and let us know how we did and what we can address in future webcasts. Thank you, everyone, for signing in today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jolene.